20 miles off the westernmost edge of Scotland, past the Outer Hebrides, sits a cluster of jagged rock islands. The locals called them the Seven Hunters. On the tallest of them, Island Moor, stands a 75-foot white stone lighthouse, built to keep ships off the rocks in some of the roughest water in the North Atlantic. By the winter of 1900, Island Moor was manned by 3 keepers on rotating duty: James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald McArthur. The job was isolation by design. The men spent weeks at a time on a rock barely large enough to hold the tower, their cottage, and a crane for hauling up supplies. The nearest witnesses were 16 miles away on the Isle of Lewis, where a Lighthouse Board employee was paid simply to watch for Island Moor's beam every night. On the night of December 15th, the watcher didn't see it. A passing steamship, the Arctur, sailing from Philadelphia to Leith, also logged that the Flannan light was dark as they passed midnight. The relief ship, the Hesperus, was supposed to make its regular supply run on December 20th. Instead, heavy storms kept it trapped in port. It didn't reach the island until December 26th, Boxing Day, 11 days after the light went dark. When the Hesperus finally arrived, nothing about the island answered back. No flag on the flagpole, no provision boxes left out, no keepers waiting at the landing. Relief keeper Joseph Moore went ashore alone, climbing the 160 steps to the lighthouse. He found an empty station. All 3 men who kept it running had vanished. No bodies, no signs of a struggle, and no indication of where they had gone. It was an absolute information vacuum, one that set the stage for a century of speculation. When Moore reached the entrance, he found the outer gate shut and the main door closed but completely unlocked. Inside, the lantern room was pristine. The lamps were fully cleaned, trimmed, and refilled, prepared for a night they would never need to light. The living quarters, however, painted a different picture. The kitchen clock had stopped, and strangely, for a station manned by 3 keepers, only 2 of the beds were unmade. Hanging by the door was a single set of oilskins. 3 men had lived on the rock, but only 1 set of weatherproof coats remained. 2 sets were missing. Lighthouse Board protocol dictated a strict standing rule for rough weather. At least 1 man must always remain safely inside the structure. Highly trained keepers do not break safety protocols casually. Whatever drew them outside was so immediately urgent that an experienced keeper abandoned the rules and ran into a freezing storm without his coat. Investigators turned to the keeper's logbook, expecting to find chaos. Instead, the entries were orderly. They recorded high winds and heavy seas through a violent storm from the 12th through the 14th, but noted that by the 15th, weather conditions were actually easing. The final markings were partial observations jotted on a slate at 9 a.m. on the 15th. This meant whatever happened to Ducat, Marshall, and McArthur took place mid-shift, in broad daylight, in the middle of routine work. The mundane reality of the logbook didn't sell papers. The sensationalist press quickly filled the silence with fabricated entries, claiming the men wrote about crying and praying in overwhelming fear. Later investigators found no evidence these dramatic entries ever existed. With the facts obscured, public imagination took over, and wild theories became tied to the jagged rocks of the Seven Hunters. The real record described improving weather and routine work. But by the time investigators could correct the record, the fabricated versions had reached newspapers on both sides of the Atlantic, and the legend outgrew the facts. Robert Muirhead, the superintendent who had personally hired the men, arrived to conduct the official investigation. Finding no answers in the untouched living quarters, he shifted his focus to the island's west landing, a mooring point more than 100 feet above the sea. Here he found massive physical damage. Iron railings were bent as if they were wire, a lifebuoy was torn clean off its fixing, and a 1-ton block of stone had been displaced entirely from its foundation. Muirhead concluded that a massive rogue wave, far larger than the prevailing storm, must have struck the landing while 2 of the men were down there securing equipment. According to the theory, the 3rd man saw the wave approaching from the lighthouse and sprinted down without his coat to help his crewmates. The water hit the landing, and all 3 men were pulled into the sea. The official ruling provided a plausible, non-supernatural explanation. It simply required accepting that a wave of this scale struck at the exact moment all 3 men were in its path. Muirhead's theory accounts for the missing men, but it leaves lingering anomalies. It doesn't explain the closed entrance gate, why only 2 beds were unmade, or why trained professionals would uniformly abandon the safety of the lighthouse. The station at Elan Moor was fully automated in 1971. No one has kept watch there in decades. The rock remains completely devoid of human presence, though the light still turns. What's left when the invented parts are stripped away is stranger for being so ordinary. 3 experienced men gone without a trace. Whatever came for James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald McArthur that December morning left no witnesses, no bodies, and no note. Only a stopped clock, an empty rock, and a question that has outlived everyone who might have answered it. This case remains unresolved.